So the Mar-a-Lago documents, right? Feels like a story we've been hearing about forever. But through all the legal drama, all the headlines, there's been this one big question just hanging in the air, mostly met with, just guesswork.
The question is really that simple. Why? Why on earth were hundreds of super-sensitive government documents just sitting at a private residence long after the presidency was over? That's the real mystery here. And it turns out, some brand new information might finally be giving us a clue.
Okay, so we all remember when FBI agents found those boxes back in 2022. But the reason they were there in the first place, that's always been the giant missing piece of the puzzle. Well, until now, maybe. A document just released to Congress seems to point to a very, very specific motive that investigators were zeroing in on.
So where is this new info coming from? It's not a leak, it's not some new witness suddenly appearing. No, this comes straight from an official memo written by the office of the guy who actually led the whole investigation, Special Counsel Jack Smith.
And this is what's so important about where this comes from. This wasn't some press release for the public. Nope. This was an internal progress report from way back in January 2023. It was basically a memo to track how the investigation was going, and it's only just now seeing the light of day because it was part of a document dump to Congress.
And buried inside that memo was this absolute bombshell of a line. Investigators literally wrote, and I'm quoting here, "Trump possessed classified documents pertinent to his business interests, establishing a motive for retaining them." Wow, I mean, this is huge. It's the first time we're seeing investigators on the record formally connecting these secret documents to a potential financial motive.
All right, so the alleged motive is money, financial gain. But what was the special counsel's office actually looking at? What evidence made them even float this theory? Well, the memo lays out a few specific things. The source material points to a few key things. First, investigators believed a lot of these documents were directly tied to the former president's business interests all over the world. Second, there was evidence that he showed a classified map to other people while on a private plane. And then there's that detail that I think we all remember from the pictures. These incredibly sensitive papers were just stored in the most random unsecured places, like closets and, yeah, even a shower.
And if you want to understand just how sensitive this stuff was, get a load of this. According to Representative Jamie Raskin, one of the documents they found was so top secret that only 6 people in the entire United States government were even cleared to look at it. Just 6. So when that kind of information comes out, you can bet the political reaction is going to be intense. And it was. It led to this just blistering accusation from Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin. He actually wrote to the Attorney General, saying this whole thing suggests the president, and I quote, "who may have sold out our national security to enrich himself." I mean, that's not just a political jab. That's about as serious as an accusation gets.
Now, an accusation that explosive was never going to just hang in the air, right? Of course not. It was met with an immediate and equally forceful denial. And that's where you get these two totally different versions of reality clashing.
And you can see the two sides of this fight laid out pretty clearly here. On one hand, you have the accusation selling out national security, and on the other, you have a White House spokesperson swinging right back, calling the claims, quote, deranged lies from Democrats with zero credibility, while saying flat out that President Trump did nothing wrong.
And the former president himself has obviously had a lot to say about the special counsel. For instance, he posted on Truth Social, calling Jack Smith a, quote, deranged animal who shouldn't be allowed to practice law.
Okay, so we've got this bombshell memo. We've got these completely opposite narratives. But here's where the story takes a really wild and complicated turn. All of these explosive new details, they're about a criminal case that, well, it doesn't even exist anymore. To really get our heads around how that's even possible, we got to walk through the legal journey this case took.
All right, so let's break down the legal stuff because it's super important here. A grand jury did indict the former president. We're talking 37 counts, serious charges like withholding national security info. But then, in July of 2024, Judge Eileen Cannon came in and just dismissed all of it, the whole case. Her reasoning? It all came down to a very specific legal argument that Special Counsel Jack Smith hadn't been properly appointed. Basically, she ruled that the Attorney General didn't have the authority to appoint a private citizen, which is what Smith was, to be a special counsel with all the power of a prosecutor. So the case got thrown out on a procedural issue, not on the actual evidence.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? You've got the indictment back in the summer of 2023. A year later, bam, July 2024, the case is dismissed. And now, almost 2 years after the case was tossed,
This internal memo from the investigation finally goes public in March 2026. It's a really strange sequence of events. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with this weird paradox, right? We have this incredibly powerful new information about a potential motive in a huge national security investigation. But it's for a case that, from a legal standpoint, is already done. Over.
And that brings us to this really fascinating question that hangs over all of this. When a case is legally closed, does new evidence like this even matter anymore? Sure, in a court of law, the book is closed. But what about in the court of public opinion? When new info surfaces long after a decision has been made, can it actually change the story? Does the final chapter on something like this ever really get written?